galamsey, I think, has become the one big one. There are many facets to the conversations that are coming out of it. The first one, of course, is around the state of emergency. Sure. The president's response to the question about that was quite straightforward. He said that, look, there are many other things that can be done. Sure. Before a state of emergency becomes necessary. He considers it the last resort. Sure. There are many groups, including the Coalition Against Galamsey, who say, now, last resort, and are we not there? If we've got the Ghana Water Company shutting down treatment plants, so there are people whose taps haven't seen water in months because of Galamsey. If we've got people reporting all kinds of conditions in our health facilities because of Galamsey. If you've got forest reserves, our lands minister reporting to us that forest reserves have been taken over by bandits. We've got over 200 excavators coming in a day. What power would constitute state of emergency beyond these?
Well, I think that, let me indicate that government appreciates the genuine concern surrounding the issue of galamsey. Because of the threat that it poses, it has naturally become an emotive subject. People are deeply concerned about it and they want urgent action. Government understands that fully, and such urgent action is underway. Let me indicate that on the matter of state of emergency, you are right. The president said that there are conventional approaches that are currently being deployed that he believes would help us achieve the objective of wiping out this canker once and for all, and that when it becomes necessary, a state of emergency may be declared. The reason being that a state of emergency is a pretty severe measure. I'm sure you are fully aware. It essentially means that you set aside laws as they are and adopt extraordinary, sometimes very harsh, very drastic measures in order to beat back a particular problem. It comes with its own difficulties, and therefore the declaration of same must be based on tangible reasoning. You must have sufficient basis to do that, so that you are very clear that the consequences that will result will be worth the effort. And as president, you do know that he has to take that decision on the basis of information available to him and what he perceives to be the capabilities of the assets that he has deployed to fight this canker. He believes earnestly that currently some gains are being made that could be sustained, and as and when we get to a stage where it is absolutely necessary to deploy those measures, that will create some discomfort for ordinary citizens and may involve measures that may not necessarily be in tandem with the way that our laws should function and all that. He will take the decision as later. So let me say that he has not ruled out a state of emergency. He just believes that we need to give ourselves a bit more time in order to be able to get there. But that said, since he became president, he has done everything that has to be done in order to ensure that we beat back on galamsey. Now what? Yes. Oh, absolutely. Now I'll go through a lot. First of all, what is the issue? We have a situation where the allure of gold has drawn thousands of Ghanaian youth into illegal mining. Let me indicate that illegal mining has existed for some time. It's been there for quite some time. In the past, it used to be artisanal. So they get a whole spade or something, they go dig the earth, and whatever little they can get, they go and sell in order to make ends meet. You can say that they were driven into that because of economic difficulties, the lack of job opportunities, and all of that. Then over time, people with much more resources found that it was a potentially lucrative venture, and so invested and employed these young people who were engaged in artisanal illegal mining to do their bidding. Then over time, heavy equipment got involved, so you found that the rates at which the environment was destroyed escalated very quickly. It was important to then intervene in a way that stopped this practice. But you see, it's also an insidious problem. Now, even as you try to address a problem, those engaged in it find ways to outwit you. So it is an effort that must go on constantly. The previous government came under fierce criticism, and I did not mince any words. I see that you play a certain video of mine. I did not mince any words. Look, they deserved every condemnation that they got, because at a point it became obvious that there was governmental complicity. There were big people within the New Petroleum Party who were engaging in this. In fact, the point man that the president himself appointed, Professor Frimpong Boateng, produced a report which you discussed on this program extensively in the past. In fact, he is on tape, and he is heard saying clearly that galamsey had become a major source of funding for the new patriotic party. So it was obvious that the government of the day was unwilling, or at least was not as motivated enough to address the problem in the comprehensive manner that it should. So they came under natural condemnation, and I took part. I do not regret that one bit, because they deserved that condemnation. In power, I work with President Mahama, so I know that he does not have any interest in mining, whether legal or illegal. In fact, he has told all of us who are his appointees that we are not even permitted to go into legal or lawful mining, let alone illegal one. That the day he hears that any of us has an interest in any form of mining, he is going to dismiss us summarily that very day. So he has made it very clear. On top of that, he, through the lands ministry, the defense ministry, the interior ministry, and other stakeholders, set up a system to beat back on galamsey. Initially, there were various teams. The IGP had one. There was one that was led by the military and others, who moved into areas that had been overtaken by galamsey. Indeed, the assessment shows that there are 288 forest reserves in Ghana. When we came to power, 44 of them had been threatened by galamsey, but at least 9 of them had been completely taken over by armed gangs who were carrying on this illegal activity. So the immediate course of action was to take back those 9 that had been taken over by these armed gangs and ensure that the 44 that were threatened were protected. As I speak to you, the 9 forest reserves that were taken over by armed gangs have been repossessed by government. But what happens is that the moment you repossess them and you think that things are okay and you leave, the people come back. So the plan now is to ensure that there is permanent presence in the most threatened forest reserves and the riverine areas. So that has been done. In addition to this, the main implement that is used are excavators. Excavators are actually construction equipment, earth moving equipment. So they are not designed to be used illegally. But of course, some of those who engage in galamsey have found ways to use it. So it was important to ensure that those equipments are taken away from those who use it. So as I speak to you, in the last 7-8 months, 440 of these excavators have been seized, some of which have been destroyed.
That's just about 2 days of import.
No problem. Again, 1,400 arrests have been made in the last 6 months. Indeed, when we did a review, we found that in the last 2 years preceding the exit of the Akufo-Addo administration, about 800 people were arrested. In the last 8 months alone, 1,400. And indeed, I engaged the Attorney General last year. He says that special courts are going to be set up to hasten the trial of these people to ensure that it serves as a deterrent. Kojo, when you go to the river bodies, what creates that difficulty with turbidity? You know that I'm a chemist by training, so I know a bit about turbidity and water quality. The water quality now is way beyond the threshold that we should have. It is not acceptable at all.
Much worse than it was when
much worse.
Government.
But the thing is that the equipment that they use to do that is a shamfan, which is some contraption that is retrofitted to stir the riverbed in order to push gold up. 300 of those have been seized and destroyed. In fact, you won't find them anywhere because they've actually been destroyed. In addition to this, 900 water pumps have been seized. And in fact, was it on Thursday or Friday, the Agric Minister handed this over to farmers to use to water their farms. Some have questioned the morality of it, but it shows that we are dispossessing those who have access to these equipment of them, so that we can put it to other use. Now, this has been done with a view to ensuring that we curb the incidence of galamsey. In addition to this, we have what we call the blue water guards. Of course, they are not armed to confront galamseyers. In other words, they are not going to shoot their way into galamsey areas and repossess them. But they serve as the eyes and ears of government and those who are involved in flashing out these people. So what they do is to police the riverine areas. And these are people located in areas where there are rivers. 980 of them have been trained as we speak. By the end of the year, we expect another 1,020, making 2,000 will be trained. So they keep an eye.
What skills were they trained in?
Oh, basically surveillance, to monitor and see who is doing what. Once they do that, they relay information to those who have the means to use force to flash out these people.
Between the police, the military, the Ministry of Lands, which institution is empowered to use force to fix
the police and the military?
The police and the
military,
military.
obviously.
So if we have this, I asked you earlier whether you are sure, because you said that the president has used every opportunity and every resource to ensure we fight this. But if you go to the Ghana Navy, for example, we have the Ghana Navy Riverine Command.
Sure.
And the job of that unit is to police our water bodies, to ensure safety, to ensure they are not being polluted and everything. I'll be interested to know the kind of resources we've given to such a unit, which is part of our security structure, to help us deal with galamsey, instead of training blue water guards.
Sure, they do their part, but you know the constraints that they face. But I don't need to get into it now. If you have access to the reports, the state of equipment and all that, you know that there's a major challenge. Their ability to patrol all our waters is significantly challenged. Even if they were operating at full throttle, there's nothing wrong with additional hands to help tackle a problem that is creating the difficulties that all of us are seeing. So that in itself is not a problem at all. The point is that you need people who maintain vigilance and are able to spot these activities for rapid response.
So the blue water guards are basically spies.
Well, you can call them that, but they do a bit more than that. You understand?
But
through their efforts,
we've seen something similar to the blue water guards. In fact, in the previous administration, there were about different names for fighting galamsey. Galam stop, galam this, galam
but
this.
there were no blue
It was not successful.
Yeah, so they called their operations by certain names. I'm talking about a specific group of people dedicated to monitoring the river bodies to ensure that we pick up early signals of such activity for responses. I don't think there's any difficulty with it. But if you allow me to go through the number of things that are being done. Now, in addition to the river guards, so now there's going to be an effort to dechemicalize the river bodies that have been so polluted in order to restore them to their original state. Now, there's talk about the influx of excavators. I could you mention that on a daily basis we have about 200. Of course, clearly it is not normal importation for construction. In the past, there was unbridled importation. There was no effort to check the influx. But it has become apparent that these excavators have been imported for suspicious purposes. I wouldn't say illegal purposes, because then you need to have the evidence. So what do? You need to be able to monitor the use of these excavators. In fact, ideally, before an excavator is imported, you need to be able to ascertain its use. But the first step is to impound those that have come in. So in the last 2 months alone, 1,300 excavators have been impounded at the port. The object is to ensure that those who have imported them bring proof of the use of these excavators other than illegal mining. Construction companies are allowed to bring in excavators. Mining firms are allowed to bring in excavators, and there's no difficulty with it. But if we get the slightest hint that it's going to be used for a purpose other than these two, or that is going to go into illegal mining or any other criminal activity, then it will be impounded and it will not be released. So that has been done. That's why it created a bit of a backlog at the port. Last week, my journal reported that they are being cleared in the dead of night. That is not the case. In fact, on 22nd August 2025, GPHA issued a statement that there had been a bit of congestion because of the seizure or the impounding of these excavators, and that they were going to engage in an exercise to evacuate them to military spaces for safekeeping. And in fact, if you went by Burma Camp today, you will see some of them packed at Burma Camp. Others are at Michelle Camp and what have you. In fact, tomorrow, the transport minister will lead a team of media people to inspect this. The object of this is to ensure that we put to rest any doubt about the whereabouts of these excavators. So that story was misleading. It was not accurate. And I thought that a cursory check with GPHA or other authorities would have revealed it. So that must be placed on record. Now, what has happened is this. The excavators at the ports are now being tracked. So tracking devices are being installed. It's a prerequisite for clearing them. Now, once it is tracked, you are able to monitor wherever that excavator goes. There's also what they call geofencing, which means that it is designed such that you cannot go outside of the area that you see this equipment is going to be deployed, because it can be disabled from source and you will not be able to move it. That didn't exist in the past, and so it made it possible for people to move excavators and use them for purposes other than what had been indicated. Now, there's an extra 600 of these excavators that are yet to be looked into. In fact, we are moving to an era where before you import it, you must receive a permit, and that permitting process will require you to bring sufficient proof of the use of that excavator before you are even allowed to put it on the ship and bring it to Ghana. So all this is being done to ensure that we're able to track what is happening. Then there was the issue of the LI 24.
I would like us to come. I would like us to come
Sure,
back
sure.